Look, there's about a dozen slides here. Some are pictures, some are text heavy. What I'm going to try and do is just look at the next 10 or 15 years and try and think through in front of you what I think is happening to the economy. I mean, the big story is that it actually happened at the turn of the century that investment by not just British companies, but by most countries in the West, the same thing happened. That investment in intangibles, things like brands, patents, copyrights, actually what you do in HR, surpassed investment in tangibles, that's to say plant and machinery. And we now have a kind of a knowledge-based service economy. At the moment, the kind of investment in intangibles is half as high again as the investment in tangibles. And that means that companies are changing, workforces are changing, and the demands on HR are changing. I mean, it's probably, it is the biggest change in the Western economies since the Industrial Revolution. It's a big, big story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about that, and I'm going to kind of try and tease out some implications for the profession and actually what you do on a day-to-day basis. But come fly with me. Some of what you'll be asked to reflect on is very big picture indeed, but it does actually, as you'll see, have a big impact, I think, on working lives. That's briefly just what I want to say. Big survey. I run the Big Innovation Centre. I chair the Big Innovation Centre. I run an Oxford College. Next door is the James Martin Centre, do future thinking. A team there worked out that over the next 20 years, 47% of all jobs in the United States are going to disappear. Routinized and replaced by machines, computers, robots, PCs. It's going to be highly, this is a very difficult world in which to kind of navigate. Another job I have is I sit on the Scott Trust, it owns the Observer and the Guardian. We're figuring out what these newspapers will be doing in the next kind of 5-10 years. No one in the newspaper world knows whether there'll be print newspapers for you to read or whether you'll be getting it on a tablet or on your iPhone, or how we're going to monetize all the information we've got. We face structural uncertainty, huge uncertainty. But if you run GSK, if you run Unilever, if you run a car company, you similarly face phenomenal challenges, business model challenges. And it is creating an enormous amount of uncertainty. Big companies are withholding investment. So at phenomenally low rates of interest at the moment, speaking as an economist, you have incredibly low levels of investment. And a phrase has been coined, it's called secular stagnation. Not much is happening because people are sitting on their hands just worried, kind of very frightened about what's going to happen in their sector. All of you, I hope, will recognize that. A lot of risk is being displaced onto ordinary people, ordinary workforces. You all know that. You'll have your chief financial officer and your CEO wanting you to get, if you don't have 0-hour contracts, of course, most of your good employers don't want to do that, but simulate it. And I think that as I'm going to explain, is that a lot of this kind of conventional thinking about how organizations should pilot themselves through this is wrong. I'm a passionate believer in as I think most of the HR community are, in purpose, corporate purpose, as kind of anchoring an organization, and actually by anchoring an organization, having something to say to workforces, motivating them. And I think that you can't get there without different kind of ownership structures to the one we currently have. And I think the big story is actually in the HR world doing three things: persuading senior managements and boards to own the notion of corporate purpose, to kind of cascade that into the way the company is owned, to think through how you can come up with, reframe the deal in terms of managing risk with workforces, and thus to get to high innovation workplaces. Easier said than done, but and I guess you all know it, but actually there is absolutely no other option, I think, in 2014. Let's see if we have there we are, fantastic. Look, I mean, you all know the great mega trends, population growth, aging, the debt legacy, the state's under pressure. You all know this. The growth of inequality, environmental restraints, and we all know that we're moving into a very tricky environment. I mean, it could be that the 50, 60 years ahead are going to be as turbulent as the 50, 60 years were from 1914 to kind of 1945. You know, running up to that period, people thought it was inconceivable. There could be wars and famines and the rise of great isms. But when Mark Reckless, the UKIP MP, the UKIP candidate in Rochester, said last night that he wanted to round up EU immigrants and send them home. You know, you realise that, you know, you're on the next step from out the mouth of a UKIP is to round up people who are not the same colour, and then a next step is rounding up Jews, isn't it? I mean, this is very, very, very dangerous. We're living in a very, very torrid environment, and actually proper concerns about immigration are segueing across Europe and in our own country into some very noxious things are being said and done. I think the conventional story, you all know it. You've got dynamic China, you know, the gridlock in America, the United States, Europe's in decline, you know, what a disaster area. We're going to lose another decade in Europe, like Japan has lost 2 decades. The Western work ethic is under decline. The future lies in Asia. That's why we should definitely follow UKIP's siren calls and leave the European Union and pledge ourselves to a future with China and India. I was with the leaders of the Beijing Party School yesterday in Oxford, spent 2 or 3 hours with them. They certainly don't think China is kind of, it's all plain sailing. And they had a very, very kind of interesting discussion with the British government. Oliver Letwin, there's this the day before, in which Oliver Letwin was saying, you Chinese must invest in the UK and we'll export back to China. And they said, no, that's not the deal. We'll invest in you, we'll bring your technology back to China, and then we'll export to you in the UK. You know, this kind of, you know, I do think on the kind of right of the Conservative Party and the kind of UKIP, and actually the kind of myriads of columnists in the centre-right press who kind of hold this out as the future for Britain, you know, have really no idea about how we are held by and seen by Asians and the Chinese in particular, and what they think the power relationship should be. You know, not actually standing with other countries in Europe and making a common kind of face the rest of the world is a category 1 error. So don't trust the conventional story. I mean, I think the problem in the Eurozone is not the euro. I think it's the fact that secular stagnation is affecting every European country. I don't think the BRICS are that dynamic. I think there will be a Chinese spring. And I think that what the events in Hong Kong presage a lot of turbulence in China. And I don't think India's set fair either. I think that if I was running a major kind of a FTSE 100 company or a Fortune 500 company, I'd be actually obviously experimenting with investment in those areas, but I'd be looking after my kind of hinterland, my base. But what is true, whatever you may think about geopolitics, or there'll be some people here, I'm sure, who want to vote for UKIP, despite what Will Hutton says. Actually, who wants to vote for UKIP here?
I think you'd rather put
let's just do something else, actually, because I want to... there's an in-out referendum on staying inside the European Union in 3 weeks' time. We've not renegotiated the terms. Who would leave the European Union? Who would vote to leave? Who would abstain? Who would vote to stay in the European Union? Well, there's quite a lot of abstentions, actually, but didn't put their hands up. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Let's just now discuss, let's move away from politics, and let's discuss a big driver.
We're getting the good news slides.
Yeah, you're getting some good news slides now, guys. Some of you, I've talked about this to some of you in the past, but I think the driver of economic growth is not fiscal policy, is not whether or not you have a single currency, is not whether you're in or out of the European Union. The big driver is actually general purpose technologies. They're what generated wealth. A general purpose technology is a technology which contains in its own DNA the possibility of transformation, so that a sailing ship in 1480 that had 3 masts, which was a brilliant technology, by the time you got to the clippers that were sailing from the teeth clippers 400 years later, that technology completely transformed what a sailing ship can do. Similarly, a railway train, similarly, a computer. There were 9 GPT. They have enormous spillover effects. There's not time in 20 minutes to go through the spillover effects. What I want you to do is to see how the pace of change is accelerating. 9 general purpose technologies in the 20th century. There will be, in my view, 20 in the 21st century. They're coming at ever faster pace. One of them was electricity. Another of them is digitization. You are living through a general purpose technology at this moment in time. It's one of the reasons why there is this secular stagnation. It's why so many business models are under threat. Those are some of the areas where there are transformatory change coming up. I could have named this list of things. One of the fellows in my college at Oxford has invented an incredible, not a 3D printer, but a 3D printer of synthetic tissue. So your DNA is read, and then your tissue is printed for every organ of your body that the operation that you're undertaking would correspond to. If you're having a kidney out, or if you're having something happen to your liver, or you're having a skin transplant, the tissue will be printed in the printer beside the surgeon's arm. And that's going to happen in the next 10 years. That's just one tiny, tiny area of the forest. Digitization, I think, is an extraordinary kind of GPC. It's kind of one of the kind of biggest deals of all time. It opens up this kind of notion of smart. You've all come across, the smart companies, smart cities, smart transport, smart finance, smart energy. We sponsor a column at the Big Innovation Centre on every Monday in the Guardian called the Innovators column. They were writing about, the kind of capacity now with an app on your smartphone to be able to adjust the thermometer kind of in your home, which will anticipate what temperature you want your home to be at from your previous lived experience, and you can adjust it and all the rest. I mean, it's an incredible, and that's again a tiny corner of it. But in 10 years' time, the world of taxis, buses, trucks, traffic management, parking, all of that will have gone. We'll have driverless cars. We'll have thinking transport, and that again will be just one dimension of the way in which the world is changing. That's just to show you that intangibles are moving ahead of tangibles. Intangibles are the red line, and that's the UK, that's the United States. Vital for growth, and innovation is a big story. I had a previous speaker talking about that in innovation labs. Again, the growing firms are ones which have more copyrights and patents than slow growing firms. That was always true even 30 years ago. It's now just stares you in the face. If you want to survive in today's environment, you must have an innovation capacity. And as HR professionals, you should be asking yourself the question, what is the innovation process in the company in which I work? Can I identify it? If I can't identify it, what should it be? And if I have one, is it working well? And how would I benchmark it? Actually, we're doing some work at the BIC on that in the future. You might want to get involved in it. Some of the jobs that are coming, I think is quite fun. I mean, there's, of course, the rise of micro. I mean, all of you in any firm that's larger than 500 people are going to be challenged by a kind of a micro company, a micro brewer, a micro fashion designer, a micro car maker. I mean, this is and those are some of the kind of fun companies that some areas that are coming through. And a lot of the future jobs growth, by the way, you talk about 47% of jobs disappearing in the next 2 decades, a lot of the new jobs are going to come in this area of the micro, of self-employment that comes with it, and also coaching, mentoring, caring, teaching, and actually doing what you do as HR professionals. Those are some of the sectors I think are going to fly. Just cast your eye down that. You check out whether your company organization is in it. I do think that this movement to the low carbon economy is becoming, there's such momentum behind it that notwithstanding actually, again, the climate change deniers, I think that comparative advantage for any company, but it has to play the sustainability card these days. I think that, and here we get into the world of HR, and I'll draw my remarks to a close. I think that I am a big advocate of open innovation. the only way that one can navigate all this change and all this uncertainty is by being kind of open to others. And organizations that are siloed, who think they have all the answers in-house, make category 1 errors. You have simply got to find ways of networking into kind of other organizations, other companies, kind of finding out how they see the future, and actually recognizing commonalities. So that, for example, if you talk for Transport for London, they will tell you that actually really managing London's transport is a big data issue. If you talk to GSK trying to reinvent the way they approach antibiotics, they'll say looking at the various structures, the 24,000 molecules that constitute the human genome, is a big data issue. And actually, you find all kinds of convergence in companies now, in disparate previous sectors, recognizing that digitalization is actually creating a commonality of challenge. So that actually, if you're on the board of Renault or on the board of VW, who could have guessed that your biggest challenge would be Google and Tesla with their driverless cars and battery-operated cars? That was inconceivable 10 years ago. Peter Thiel said that, and was mocking people like me, saying, all this digitalization, and they promised us all this stuff, and all we've got is 140 letter characters on Twitter. But actually, mocking the idea that we're driverless cars and mocking the idea that there could be pilotless aircraft, we are having the first tests for really serious civilian pilotless aircraft. So, there has to be risk pooling. There has to be joint problem solving. You have to share. You have to be a high trust organization. And if you're going to do any of that, then that's how I get to the point I made at the very beginning. You have to be trusted by your interlocutors in an open innovation network. You have to have a clear sense of business purpose. You have to know who you are. Above all, your interlocutors have to know that you don't tell lies, that actually you don't have conflicts of interest, that actually you keep your promises, both to your workforce and to your supply chain, the people you deal with. The objective of the HR community is to pilot your organizations in this direction, in my view. So I finish up by saying the first place this has to be lived is in the boardroom. I wonder whether we shouldn't be developing innovation and human capital accounting. We've talked about it for 20 years, but let's do it. I think that because there's so much change, no job is going to be the same. So I think that when we hire, we have to build into the employment contract the notion that it is going to be a redefinition of the job, rather than all this dreadful business that some organizations still go in for. We have to redefine the job by 10 to 15%. You have to resign the job and reapply for it. That is nonsense. In today's environment, with 20 GPTs coming, intangibles investment running at half as high again as intangible investment running half as high again as tangibles, the notion that jobs in this environment are going to stay the same over 10 or 15 years is just crap. You know that they're going to change, and you know that you're going to have to ask the post holder to take on different responsibilities and redefine their role, and that should be pre-agreed on the moment of hiring, pre-agreeing necessary training, and rethinking the notion of career. I also think one has to kind of rethink reward. I think the reward needs to be extraordinarily flexible, both upward and downward. I put the idea of earn back into the public domain when I was asked by the coalition to think about executive pay in the public sector, and I made the point that actually I think that actually everyone from starting with senior post holders, but actually cascading through organisation, should put an amount of, if they want a bonus, then they should pre-declare how much. They should put that proportion of their salary at risk. They should earn it back. Once they earned it back, they qualify for a bonus. And actually, if they don't succeed, they don't earn the portion of their state money back. This embeds flexibility of reward in organizations, and embeds the fact that actually in a fast-changing environment, jobs aren't actually the same year on year, and you constantly need redefining. I do think we have to reinvent the notion of the union. I think the disappearance of workplace voice in most private sector workplaces, so that union density is only 15%, is a disaster. I think we have to reinvent trade unions as partners of managements, and who own and understand this agenda, and actually help you implement it and are a trusted and are trusted intermediaries between HR departments, managements, and actually workforces. So I talk about a new unionism, and actually there's all kinds of opportunities for using kind of social media to kind of get these messages out. That is just thinking the ecosystem, and that's us at the Big Innovation Centre. You can get hold of me. There should be a full stop there, not a comma. We just put it in, and that's my colleague at the Big Innovation Centre, and that's the website. So take some questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. I might have a glass of water if there's one available. Actually,
sure. Can I ask you a quick question while I'm pouring you one? Open innovation was one of your main points in terms of what organisations need to do, change differently. Who would you see the organisations? Which organisations do you think are really taking the lead on that? I mean, I know P&G have been
Thank you very much.
pushing that, but
yeah, I mean,
are there companies that people could look at?
It's a growing trend. I mean, we have nearly a dozen companies who are members of the Big Innovation Centre, all of whom either are open innovators or profess to be open innovators, or are putting their toe in the water. So they would include Unilever, who have a whole category of kind of open innovation VPs.
Yes.
There's Procter & Gamble, of course. I mean, Barclays Bank, interestingly, have organised a series of kind of challenge events last autumn around kind of a big open innovation agenda. Okay. GSK and the drug companies are trying open innovation structures to invent new drugs. You'll find that EDF Energy are thinking of trying to be kind of open innovators in the sense of trying to become more customer centric. Some of the Juniper is a kind of Silicon Valley company, joined the Big Innovation Centre. They did a big presentation saying, think of us as co-creators of kind of, trying to kind of co-create business solutions, And so that, you find these words, co-creating, open innovating, the sharing revolution, they're all around. The trouble is that, of course, and when it gets to big data, of course, nobody wants to share big data. People kind of think they always talk about it, but actually getting companies to actually share sensitive data with absolute guarantees about anonymization, which of course you can't really give because no one's written the kind of algorithms to do it yet. So there's a lot of, even at my own university, Oxford University, there's 10 pharmaceutical companies that come together amazingly to kind of support kind of research in the genome, because each one of them can't do it themselves. So it's a kind of big thing. It's a big trend.
Yeah. Okay. Please. Thank you. Maria.
Thank you for that water. It's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Very interesting discussion here. So just any insight you have on the kind of development that would kind of create more of that mindset and those behaviors in companies that then prepare people more for, this kind of innovative thinking, etc. Anything you've seen work effectively in that area?
I think, this is one of the, I'm talking to an audience who knows, all of you start your careers bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, you're going to get culture change, you're going to get kind of people, all those good things, reorientate the mission, and you end up, after 25 years at it, thinking how bloody hard it is. There really isn't a magic bullet. I do think, and again, nothing I'm going to say is news, but I do think that one of the both good and bad things about today is that there are kind of more insurgents than ever, and actually insurgents themselves have a kind of, they want to change the world, and they're going to leave the world a better place than they found it, and it kind of really gives them a sense of mission. But if you're one of the companies at the receiving end of insurgency, you yourselves have to change a lot. So I mean, I've watched a very considerable change in The Guardian, for example, which is, I mean, it's still got a long way to go, but I mean, this is an organisation. I mean, let's, amongst friends here, Roger Alton's an old friend of mine, used to edit The Observer, succeeded me as editor of The Observer, and when Alan Rusbridger decided that The Guardian was going to have a big online presence, The Observer had a big decision to make. Was it going to go online or not? And Roger Alton said, it's all bollocks. Online is bollocks. I'm not having anything to do with it. And in lots of four-letter words. And afterwards, a couple of the journalists, very senior journalists, who names you will know, came up to me and said, what a pleasure it was to work for editor Roger Alton, who still believed in newspapers, and how frightful it was that Alan Rusbridger, who edits The Guardian, was so committed to taking The Guardian online. That was 10 years ago. And nobody in newspapers would now say that would say what Roger Alton said, but it's made a huge change. I mean, kind of the down table subs who've been used to kind of changing copy to fit templates on paper, have to reinvent themselves as actually kind of fast-moving, kind of very agile rewriters and of placing copy in an online version of a newspaper. It's completely different, sensitive to kind of where the online hits are coming and moving that up so that kind of catches people's eye, or readers writing a headline in an online kind of version of the paper. So, the skill sets involved and the culture change involved is extraordinary. And you're only halfway there. I've watched Trade and Media Group go from being print to online. That's an extraordinary piece of culture change. I was asked recently to talk to John Lewis, who everyone admires in retailing, who have this kind of, the much admired, the John Lewis partnership, and everyone's a colleague. But actually, even there, the staff are saying, we have all this democracy, we have all this voting, but actually, it's a pretty good place to work. But is it a great place to work, like John Speed and Lewis said? Well, not really. So, I do think that, there's absolutely no place to hide. Workforces are incredibly demanding. If you think you pull something off, you've got to think about it. It's like painting the fourth bridge. You've done it. Oh, sure, we've got that one through. But actually, within 6 months, you're at it again. And culture is a big living thing. I do think it requires. It has to. And again, I'm telling you nothing none of you don't know, and repeat over and over. But if it's not lived by the people at the top of the organisation, you're doomed. And one of my kind of, I got this Lifetime Achievement Award for HR for saying the same thing for 25 years, really.
It's the tenacity. It's the tenacity, Will.
It's absolutely bloody obvious that, that unless the people at the top kind of live it, unless actually you have HR people at the top, actually, on Exco, kind of on the C-suite, as they say in the United States, the game's lost. If all, we are kind of functionaries to kind of, lose people efficiently, hire people efficiently, and keep the temperature down when there's the dispute and avoid getting your name in the papers with employment tribunals, which is actually broadly how most people in the Exco see you. Unless actually you can persuade them that this agenda is the future, it's big trouble. Which is one of the reasons I'm quite keen. I left the Work Foundation, I've gone to Oxford, and the big innovation centre is now spun out of the Work Foundation. But I do think having broken my head of trying to kind of make this for 10 years at the Work Foundation, I now think I'm now trying to play a different card. I think that I think it's indisputable that actually, the world I've described is the world. There's no doubt about it. You can actually say, you can do Will is understated, or Will is overstated, but direction of travel is clear to everybody. And the intangible story is clear to everybody, and the rate of change is clear to everybody, and the growth of insurgency is clear to everybody. I mean, it's absolutely. So the only way to fight back is to be an innovator, and the only way to innovate is the kind of things I've been saying. And that means, rather than actually kind of try to persuade people that they should have good workplaces and great places to work, actually start thinking about let's try and create organizations that can innovate. And let's get our people and let's be the innovators. And through that agenda, push kind of a lot of the great things that have been said and done kind of in the HR world, but actually you can't get any traction on the decision makers.
Can we take just one last quick question?
Yeah, I recently went to a lecture from Donald Sol, Professor Donald Sol.
Sorry?
Professor Donald Sol, ex of
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
LSE,
yeah, yeah.
and he was talking about the two key dimensions of strategic execution not done very well, and that is coordination and organisational agility. Now, organisational agility means basically companies letting go, experimenting. Do you think that companies, to survive, really have got to think about the balance of control and empowerment to actually get this open innovation that you're talking about?
In a few words.
Let me take a few hours over this answer.
Yeah.
Look, I mean,
The short answer, not the long one, right?
You basically have to. That example I gave of the Guardian Observer is the classic. You have to cannibalize your own organization. And actually, what is happening in The Guardian and is happening to a degree at the Financial Times and Economist and at the Daily Mail, not happening at the Express and not happening at the Telegraph, actually, just to tell you. But it's happening both in liberal journalism and centre-right journalism, is actually recognizing that you've got to cannibalize from inside. If you don't recognize that, both the people who run the Mail and the people who run the Guardian basically own the fact that within 10 years it's going to be an online story completely, and they've just got to go with it. And you hire young people, you promote them, you're ruthless about the people that you have to have in positions. You actually pick your fights, but you have to have fights because if you don't turn yourself inside out, you've lost it. I'm afraid. I'm sorry, but you know that. You even knew it before you asked the question. I don't even know why you asked the question because you knew what answer you'd get.
Well, yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Will,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.